Good morning. My name is Karen Arters. I'm a statistician 1 from the Census Surveys and Administrative Statistics section. I'll be presenting on the main findings of the 2018 poverty study. Overview of the presentation. In this presentation, I'll be going over the background of the study, the measurement methodology used, and the main findings. Background. What is the 2018 poverty study? In the first quarter of last year, 2020, the SIB, through the Capacity Building Project for the Advancement of Statistics in the Caribbean, or PRASC, embarked on a project to update the poverty lines for the country in collaboration with Statistics Canada. The existing and updated poverty lines were from the study conducted for the 2009 Country Poverty Assessment. Doing some stock taking, an updated data source was found and the process began. The most updated and comparable data source for the study was identified as the 2018-2019 Household Budget Survey. Comparing the data sources from 2009 and 2018, we can see that both the 2009 Living Standards Measurement Survey and the 2018 Household Budget Survey were near identical, both in design and topics covered. Both captured the same data needed for the conduct of a poverty study. Defining poverty. In 1990, the World Bank defined poverty as the inability to attain a minimum standard of living. This definition would pave the way for the methodology used for the study. The measurement methodology. Moving on to the measurement methodology, how is poverty measured? There are several ways of measuring poverty. However, the most commonly used approach is to firstly have some measuring stick to measure well-being. This is a welfare indicator. Secondly, a cutoff point below which the poor are identified, which is the poverty line. Lastly, a poverty estimate, which is a summary statistic. Absolute poverty lines are monetary-based poverty lines that assess the physical requirements for survival. The 2018 poverty study used the same methodology that was used in 2009. The cost of basic needs approach to measuring absolute poverty. What does the cost of basic needs involve? First, a nutritional requirement is chosen. For the study, 2,400 kilocalories was used as recommended by the FAO and the WHO. Second, the cost of meeting the nutritional requirement is calculated. That is, the cost of the minimum food basket, or MFB. The poverty line is then the total cost, including the cost of both the food and the non-food items given by the formula below. Updating the minimum food baskets. The minimum food baskets are the foundation of the cost of basic needs methodology. These are the least cost or cheapest combination of food items that would satisfy the nutritional requirement. As such, the experts from the Ministry of Health and Wellness were sought out from the onset for assistance with updating the baskets. With their guidance and support, the 2009 baskets were updated to reflect the consumption patterns and changes in prices for 2018. Here we see in this example an MFB for the Corozal district. For this bundle of food items, the total cost was $6.94. Poverty lines definitions. Again, all definitions were the same as those used in the 2009 study. The poor were those households or individuals that could not afford the daily cost of food and non-food items. The indigent were those households or individuals that could not afford the daily cost of food. Vulnerable to poverty were those households or individuals that were close to the poverty line, being one economic shock or natural disaster away from falling into poverty. The poverty lines, national and district. The results in the following table shows the cost of each of the poverty lines for each district and for the country. The cost of the indigent line, or MFB, range from $2,533 annually for Corozal to $2,738 annually for Belize, and it was $2,682 national. Meanwhile, the cost of the poverty line ranged from $6,394 annually for Toledo to $9,734 annually for Belize and 7,961 national. The main findings: a snapshot of the country at 2018. In 2018, there were approximately 106,202 households, and from these households, the population was approximately 389,235 individuals. The average household size was about 3.7 individuals per household. Poverty indices, the head count ratio. In 2018, there were approximately 201,616 individuals that were living in poverty, meaning that about 1 in every 2 individuals were living in poverty, resulting in a head count ratio of 52%. This was a significant increase from the 136,640 for individuals and consequent head count ratio of 41% in 2009. Poverty indices, the poverty gap. In 2018, the average shortfall of the poor from the poverty line was about $1,450, or as we can see from the chart, a poverty gap of about 18% of the cost of the poverty line. This meant it would have taken 18% of the cost of the poverty line to eliminate poverty in the country, a significantly higher amount than the 11% poverty gap in 2009. The Gini Index. Looking at income inequality, the Gini Index is a measure of the level of income inequality within a country, where an index of 0 would mean there is no inequality, and an index of 1 would mean that there is complete inequality. As we can see from the chart, in 2018, the Gini Index was about 0.49, meaning the level of income inequality in the country was not extreme. This index was within the acceptable international range of 0.3 to 0.5. However, when compared to the index of 2009, which was 0.38, we see that there is an upward trend toward more severe levels of income inequality. Overall poverty rates. In 2018, similar to the head count ratio, the poverty rate was about 52%. Again, this marked a significant increase from the rate of 41% in 2009. Meanwhile, the indigence rate was about 9%, a significant decrease from 16% in 2009. This is encouraging, showing that despite overall increases in poverty rates, there were less individuals living in critically poor situations. In terms of those vulnerable to falling into poverty, there were about 42,590 individuals in this category in 2018. This was a slight decrease from the 45,614 individuals falling into this category in 2009. Poverty rates by area. Looking at the poverty rates by area, we see that in 2018, the poverty rate was significantly higher for rural areas compared to urban, at 59% and 43% respectively. Furthermore, urban areas experienced significant increases, nearly doubling since 2009. Poverty rates by district. In 2018, the Toledo district had the highest poverty rate at about 82%. Toledo also experienced the largest change in rates since 2009, increasing from 60% to 82%. The Corozal district had the lowest poverty rate at about 45% in 2018, and was the only district that experienced a decrease in its rate since 2009, from 56% to 45%. Indigence rates by district. In 2018, the Toledo district had the highest indigence rate at about 30%. Meanwhile, the Belize district had the lowest rate of indigence at 4%. Corozal experienced the largest change since 2009, decreasing from 16% to 5% in 2018. The Orinjoa, Belize, and Cayo districts saw virtually no change in their rates over this period of time. Poverty rates by sex. There were virtually no differences in rates of poverty for males and females. Males had a slightly higher poverty rate of 52% compared to females at 51%. Poverty rates by age. The rates of poverty followed a decreasing trend as age increased. Individuals' likelihood of falling into poverty decreased as their ability to secure an income increased. Children under 14 years of age had the highest rates of poverty, and indigents at 60% and 12% respectively. Meanwhile, elderly persons had the lowest rates of poverty at 43%. Poverty and indigence rates by ethnicity. The Maya had both the highest poverty and indigence rates at 77% and 33% respectively. Meanwhile, the Creole had the lowest poverty rate at 47%. The Creole also had the largest change in the poverty rate since 2009, from 32% to 47% in 2018. Poverty rates by household size. Larger households were most likely to be indigent. These households with 6 or more persons had the highest rates of indigence at 12% and 20% respectively. Meanwhile, smaller households were least likely to fall into poverty. These households with 3 or less persons had the lowest rates of poverty. Poverty rates by household type. The presence of children less than 18 years in a household directly influenced poverty rates. Households with children had a poverty rate of 51%. Meanwhile, households without children had a significantly lower poverty rate of 33%. Extended households, or those households with children of both the head and other household members, had the highest rates of poverty, at 57%, and the largest average household size at 5.6. Poverty rates of the older population. About 62% of the elderly were living with other family members. These elderly persons were most affected by poverty, with a poverty rate of 46%. Single elderly persons were also significantly affected by poverty, having a poverty rate of 45%. Elderly couples were the least affected by poverty, with a poverty rate of 33%. Poverty rates by highest level of education of the head. Looking at poverty and education, educational attainment directly influenced poverty status. The lower the level of education completed by the heads of households, the higher the rates of poverty were for the household. Households with heads completing secondary school or higher had significantly lower poverty rates. Meanwhile, households with heads completing a tertiary level of school had the lowest rates. In summary, in 2018, Belize had a poverty rate of 52%. This represented an increase from 41% in 2009. However, the indigence rate decreased to 9% in 2018 compared to 16% in 2009. Poverty was most prevalent in rural areas and highest in the Toledo district. Poverty rates among children and young adults still remain the highest.